practiced Protestant evangelicalism. And then last year, came back into the church, came back to his baptism in the Catholic Church. And so he has a wonderful, beautiful testimony to give us this morning, along with some theological reflections, I think, to help us as well. So Raymond, if you'll please come forward.
Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of thy people, and kindle in them the fire of thy love. Send forth thy Spirit, O Lord, and they shall be true, and thou shalt renew the My name is Raymond Vincent, and I'll just give you some background about where I come from. My ancestors were migrant workers in California, from Portugal and the Philippines, and they lived and picked grapes all along the coast and finally settled in the Sacramento area, devout family. And everything was going pretty good until about the 1960s, when they kind of experienced the collapse of American Catholicism. And I was just going through my family's photo albums the other day, and I was looking, and in the 50s, I see everyone's baptisms and confirmations, and little by little, less and less, so you get to my poor dad, who's the last of the 7, and not really in a religious faith at all. So that's the family I come from. Catholic, yeah, but no, not really. So my dad, at the age of 20, got his girlfriend pregnant. That's me. And then a year later, again, that's my brother. But at the age of 25, my dad's age of 25, things have gotten so bad that he was actually involved in a murder. And he was tried, convicted, and sent to prison. This, of course, rocked my family, and particularly my mother, who, upon this, had a mental breakdown and developed a severe case of schizophrenia. And then she started self-medicating with methamphetamine. So not a good start in life. But she was wise enough to give my brother and I over to my aunt and uncle, who kind of took us in and adopted us and really raised us as our own. So that was the beginning of my life on this planet. Growing up, despite those circumstances, it was fairly normal. I went to Catholic school, which meant by 5th grade I was a confessing atheist. I remember being in 5th grade and saying, I don't believe in God. But after 5th grade, my family, we just switched to public school, and they have no more obligation to go to church, so they don't. And that's when my family really stopped practicing the faith. Now, my brother and I, just because of our unique beginning, have always been kind of melancholy, kind of introspective. And what that turned into in my life was a deep desire or a deep draw to spirituality. So as I grew older, I started pursuing different aspects of the New Age, studied everything in Buddhism, shamanism, Hinduism. And freshman year, I guess I was your basic New Age kid with a slight hint of atheism. I remember my freshman year, I'm sitting there in a counselor's office trying to figure out how to plan my high school career, and I tell the guy, I don't care. I don't care about the whole educational system. I just want to be a Buddhist monk and then leave everything. So I did. I dropped out of school, got rid of most of my possessions, slept on the floor, and my parents they didn't know what to make of me. So eventually they forced me to get in some kind of independent study high school program and finish that. So I've always been spiritually inclined. My quest for God, as I come to see it, started taking some interesting routes. Interesting from my point of view as a New Age kind of guy. I started studying Kung Fu, and I got really good at it, just because I was attracted to the Eastern mysticism. And my Kung Fu teacher, turns out, was a Christian, which I thought was odd. And one day after class, I decided to get into a debate with him, because I didn't want to be a Christian. Come on. And I lost. And it was devastating. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I read the Bible. Wow. So I get through, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. It's okay. There's something to this. Maybe there's a creator spirit. So I started being drawn to Christianity. And one night I just decided to read the Gospel of John. So I sat down and I read it, cover to cover, just the whole book. And by the end of reading that book, I just broke down weeping and sobbing for hours. And no one told me you're supposed to do that. No one told me what I'm supposed to do. But I just remember weeping and saying, God, I'm so sorry. I've been so stupid. That was my prayer that was coming out of me, weeping. So at that point, I guess I considered myself a Christian. But I didn't have any religious formation, no outlet, no church. So I started watching the Christian evangelists on the TV. And I thought, oh yeah, these guys are really great. Well, that didn't go so far. Yeah, that's actually where I developed my really rabid anti-Catholicism. It's from what comes on at midnight on some Christian network. It's interesting. So anyway, I try to live this lifestyle out. It's not working. Eventually I give up. I moved to Seattle, live with my girlfriend for a short time, and by God's grace, I didn't get anyone pregnant or get an STD. Thank God for that. But that relationship kind of fell apart, and I moved back home. And at that point, I was just at the lowest of the low, and I said, Lord, I really jacked up. I just need you. So I re-invited God. And people talk about when I got saved. I've gotten saved so many times. I can't keep track anymore. So anyway, I was at the lowest point I could be, and I reached out to God, and then I kind of figured, well, I should ought to, get involved with other Christian people. So that's what I did. I went to the mega evangelical church down the street, and at the time I was really zealous about God, and I still am. So, what did? They stuck me on leadership. I don't know if that was a good idea, but that's what they did. So anyway, within 6 months, I was, kind of shunned by that church. Not because of anything bad, it's just I have this personality trait where I have to address problems, and it just makes people uncomfortable. And I've tried to bring prudence into that. So anyway, I left that community. Well, I didn't leave. In there, I met one of my good friends, who's still my good friend today. His name is Brian. And we began to pray every night at my house. We'd light a candle, read the Bible, and it was interesting. I'd never done that before. So we started to pray, and we also got connected with a different church, a different community that was smaller, more intimate, easier for us to, practice our faith. So we began to pray. Now, I'm just going to back up a little. My journey led me into all sorts of kind of spirituality, and that was just my deal. My brother, on the other hand, was led basically into Satanism. At the same time I became a Christian, he became a confessing Satanist, and his room was filled with AFI posters and books and all sorts of stuff. But it got so bad at this point that my brother was slitting his wrists, and not the kind to kill yourself, but the kind, he tried to explain it. I just need to feel pain to know I'm alive, or something like that. And he was in all the counseling with all the other teenagers who cut themselves, and it wasn't working. So this became a nightly ritual where I'm wrestling bloody razor blades out of his hands, and it just wasn't good. And of course, my parents just did not know what to do with either of us. So anyway, me and my friend Brian start praying, and interesting things start happening. And we feel led to start praying for my brother. So that's what we do. Every night we pray for my brother. And finally we asked him, my brother, his name's Tony, Tony, can we pray for you? So we went into his room, which was really creepy, and I didn't like going there. But anyway, we started praying for him every day. And he received it. And within a short time, he had a complete transformation in his life. He never cut himself again. We 2 o'clock in the morning, burnt all of his CDs and posters at the park down the street from my house. I don't know how someone didn't call the cops on us. There was a huge fire, and they were like, yes, look at the devil. I didn't know if he was baptized or not. So I'm like, I'm going to baptize you. so I did right there in the bathtub. So that was great. And then now he is a practicing Catholic. Like all the practicing, but at least he's in the building. So that was good. So to continue on with all this. So in this new church that I was at, they did the same mistake and put me on leadership. And, we had a nice youth group. It was running good. We, did a lot of outreach to the poor. We prayed. We played a game, and then we had a talk and did a song. It was your typical thing. And I started feeling, and here's my, personality trait that needs prudence. I started praying, and I said, this is good, but it's not, I don't think it's what God wants. So I told my pastor this, and, well, he got really upset. But then he went off and prayed and said, you know what, Ray, you're right, let's shut it down. So shut the youth group down. And we prayed about this decision. And what the Lord was kind of telling us to do is, let's take a handful of the kids who really want to know God, and let's pour into those kids. Let's equip them in Christian discipleship. He made us read The Cost of Discipleship. He made us read Richard Foster's Celebration of Discipline over and over again. We knew how to pray. We knew how to fast. We were instilled with Christian discipline. And within a few years, that strategy launched a new ministry called the Roseville House of Prayer. And basically what happened is these young people that we were trying to pour into, me included, we started developing a deep hunger for knowing Christ in the area of prayer. And other churches in the area, their young people were also feeling the same thing, so we kind of combined together and partnered up with a ministry in Kansas City, Missouri, and we formed what we call the Roseville House of Prayer, which was a place where eventually we wanted 24/7 prayer and worship. And this actually exists in Kansas City, Missouri, and we sent our kids over there to be in their internship, and eventually we started doing internships. So it was a successful strategy, because after a while we were actually doing intensive internships where we would have multiple young people come, spend 3 months in the house of prayer, teach them the Christian disciplines, and then send them back into their own churches. So it was a very fruitful ministry. We started throwing big conferences. The One Thing Conference in Sacramento, I think the second year we threw it, we had 2,000 young people. And all we did was plaster every church we could find with flyers on prayer and fasting. Teachers us, well, that's great. And one only showed up. So it was very, very successful. But I'll just go back and give you a little bit of what my life looked like in the house of prayer. The whole ministry revolved around obviously prayer, but in particular this verse in Psalm 27:4. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. Behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. That was our heartbeat. That's what this t-shirt said. This is from one of the conferences. And that's really what we did. I came on as a full-time missionary. I wasn't going anywhere. I was actually being a missionary into the place of prayer. And it was literally my job for 3 years to pray 8 hours a day. So that's what we did. And of course I had administrative duties, and I ran the bookstore, and I played on a worship team, and I taught, and I studied. But mostly what I did was pray. And I developed just a deep cry in my heart of intercession to my generation, to the 18 to 25-year-olds. And I learned, actually 18 to 29. Sorry, but I developed this deep call to a place of intercession. And that started producing in me a need to help my generation. So eventually I got onto the teaching staff. And the House of Prayer was unique, because in order to sustain that level of daily prayer, we had to start studying Catholicism. And a lot of people were like, ooh, I don't know about this, but we read Fire Within by Father Dubé, and we got really into the Carmelite saints, St. John de Cross, Streets of Avila, and also St. Bernard of Clairvaux. And it was standard reading to actually read these books, which kind of freaked people out. So anyway, that's what we did. And I'm going to get back to all the details of how I came into the church a little bit later. But basically, after years, a few years, 3 years, in a house of prayer, of praying, fasting, and study, I eventually concluded that I had to become Catholic. So in 2007, in the Easter season, before Easter, I knew I was already Catholic, so I knew I didn't need to do anything, just go to confession. So that's what I did. I went to confession, and I was back in. So that was one of the, it was such a blessing in my life. I was going to Mass every day because, I was used to praying all day, so church. So that time was filled with a lot of blessings and just a lot of good stuff. But it also started bringing out a lot of pain. And the pain was that I had come from this community, a thriving young adult community. All that I know about Christian young adults is that we're on fire. That's my entire paradigm. And now I come into the church, and it's like, nothing. Did I just make a really bad choice, Lord? I mean, what did you get me? So that kind of was really moving for the first couple months, but slowly that started turning back into what I do, intercession, to pray. And it developed into two questions. And the first question I had is, why was that ministry in the house of prayer and everything I saw in the evangelical world so thriving? And what is missing? What's wrong here? What's wrong with this picture? So I sought the Lord to get answers to these two questions. And before I continue, I'd just like to say, I'm not here to give my list of grievances. We all know we're not so good at this. And if you got your little thing in the mail which, showed all the stats, we all know why we're here. So that being said, I kind of was thinking, okay, Lord, what is it that is making this not work? And I came up with a term, and I probably didn't invent this term, I probably heard it somewhere, but I call it Catholicism Light. And I defined that in 3 areas: weak theology, shady morality, and sloppy liturgy. Now, why I start off with that, now I'm going to go back a little bit more into my testimony and why I think those areas are so important. My path into the Catholic Church was deeply, deeply intellectual. In 2005, I bought a book called The Mission and Nature of Theology, written by Joseph Ratzinger. And this book just blew me away. I never had heard anything that profound. So this developed in me a deep quest to know God. I wasn't reading these books because I had some class. I was reading these books because I wanted to know Him. So I started reading the deepest theology I could find, which, I didn't have a car because I was a missionary, so I walked down the Catholic bookstore. And I started reading a guy named Hans Urs von Balthasar. Now, if you ever want to read something that will blow you away and takes a year to read, get one of his books. So I started reading this. And then, that's what actually led to my teaching ministry at the House of Prayer. And the reason I bring this up as one of my 3 areas of Catholic life is that, this generation longs for their faith to meet the deepest intellectual needs they have. And I think we have kind of been neglecting that. I mean, how we catechize in the church. When you get confirmed, you receive some catechesis, but most of what we receive in the knowledge of the faith is on a childish level. And when we move into adulthood, we need adult faith. We need that meat in order to sustain this thing, or we're just going to throw it all out as some kind of fairy tale. So I really believe that we do need to get that deep theology and just plunge ourselves into the sacred orthodoxy of our faith and the teachings of the church. I believe that to be so important because I know it was important to me and seen it be important to others. The other area, the shady morality. Coming into the church, I was kind of shocked when I was going to confession to hear some of the advice I was getting. And I don't mean that as a cut, but gosh, we need to be holy. So what I mean by this, also in 2005, I picked up a book at the Catholic bookstore called The Theology of the Body by the Holy Father. Here's what what I mean by morality. Discovering our authentic dignity as human beings and other people's authentic dignity, and that you can't use people. I mean, this is what I mean by holiness. So when I say holiness, I don't mean, oh, we need to be fire and brimstone. No, we need to discover the splendor of the truth of who we are, the splendor of holiness. That's what I mean by what we need to discover. Third part, the sloppy liturgy. I'll go back to my conversion, 2005. That's when I bought all these books. Why did I buy all these books? Why was I interested about Catholicism? The Holy Father, John Paul II, died, and his funeral was plastered on every news channel. And flicking through, I find it. And I see and hear something that my heart has never encountered. I think I even do it. Kyrie eleison. What is that? And the deacon continues. Santa Maria, ora pro me. I'm just glued to the television. Santa Giovanni Baptiste, ora pro me. I stay up all night watching reruns of this man's funeral because I've never seen anything that beautiful, and my heart was truly struck and set on fire. So, that's why I started looking into the Catholic Church, because I was struck just by the sheer beauty, and then the other things of the theology and the morality came later. And why I bring up the sloppy liturgy is because I believe firmly that what we do in the liturgy is what we're teaching about Jesus Christ, what we're saying He is and who He is. And I just have to say, if we break everything down to practical, we're saying that Jesus and our faith is dispensable when it's not convenient and it doesn't suit our lives. And if we're teaching our people that, of course we're not going to come to Mass, because we taught them He's dispensable. So, liturgy has been such an important part of my life, and in particular the area of beauty. Earlier this year, I literally quit my day job. I was making a lot of money, so I was like, what are you doing? But and I didn't know why. I know God had something to do with me. So anyway, during the Holy Father's visit to America, he said something that struck a chord in me when the bishops were asking him what to do about young adults and everything. He said something quite surprising. He said, and he didn't say quite like this, but here's the words, that the Catholic Church in America is kind of a cultural ghetto. Whoa. It's just a snobby European guy who's used to cool buildings. But I said, no, Holy Father, there's something to that, I was saying at the television. And that struck a chord with me, because I am an artist and a musician. So, now I know why I quit my job. I converted my garage into an iconography studio, and I've been pouring myself out in painting. Because I honestly believe that what we fill our minds with, it is important. And I know, we want to whitewash our churches and whatnot, but, the world's going to provide iconography, and it's not holy. And I started painting because in the deep recesses of my imagination, it's so full of pornography, so full of violence, so full of media, that I needed to start depicting Christ in His saints. So I devoted my life to the beauty of our tradition. And that was 2005, but I came to the church in 2007. What's the holdup? I found what the holdup was. Here's an interesting book I just picked up. It's called Almost Catholic. It's about an evangelical who starts discovering all the cool Catholic stuff that Catholics don't like to do anymore. And he was set on fire. So he wrote a book saying you could still be an evangelical and have all the cool stuff, but you don't actually have to become a Catholic. And that's what I did. I was involved in what's called the postmodern movement, or the emergent church, where we were bringing in all sorts of Catholic-y kind of stuff. So for those couple of years, I wasn't a non-practicing Catholic. I was a practicing non-Catholic. I was walking around, reading St. John the Cross, praying rosaries. It was very interesting. But eventually, what led me actually into the church is I knew I needed the Eucharist. I believed He was in there. And if I devoted my life to knowing God, which is what I did in the house of prayer, come on, you can't not have the Eucharist. So I had to come in. So that's what I'm here for. So I do have a commitment to the area of beauty, and I really believe that our generation needs to rediscover that historical continuity. Because if we don't know where our roots are, we can't know where we're going. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So the other question, that was the question of what I think is, this is kind of why we get the norm for individuals is to actively pursue and encounter God in every aspect of their lives and in the deepest part of their identity. And in this transforming encounter, a community develops with genuine fellowship. That's what I came up with. That's what they have. And you know what? We have the same thing. That's the same thing St. Anthony of the Desert was encountering. This young adult in Egypt who gave up his inheritance to go seek God in the wilderness. And hundreds of thousands of young adults followed him because he found God. This is the same dynamic that turned the town of Assisi upside down as a young soldier heard from heaven and sought after the Lord. Hundreds and thousands of people followed after. And this is the same dynamic that exploded on the university scene in Spain with St. Ignatius. And it even infected his roommates, to where one of his roommates goes off and becomes a missionary, St. Xavier, to China. This is the same dynamic. We've always had this. But the problem is this dynamic is not something we can bottle. It's not something any amount of conferences or mission statements can produce. What is needed is us to actually live it out. And that's really all I'm here to say. That no matter what, no matter what we do, we have to live this thing out to the fullest. And with the power of the Holy Spirit and the sacrament burning in our soul, I believe we can truly live this thing out. And what it means is being a saint. And I don't mean, let's be, good Christians. No, I'm serious. If some of you in here aren't canonized in 100 years, I'll be very disappointed. I'm serious. We need to go after this thing. And I'm not saying that as you guys need to. I need to. And yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's scary. And yes, society might marginalize you. But it will be glorious. And my final remarks are, this generation really does thrive on extremes. And I think that's why Catholic life hasn't been working. Our generation longs to give ourselves fully to something. And what I'm here today to say is, what if we give our lives in extravagant love? What if we give ourselves totally abandoned to God? We learn to hear from heaven and respond to the call of God on our lives. What if? I've seen this countless times in young adults, and there is no doubt in my mind that we can rise to this occasion. The only thing I can hold is that. I know you're afraid. I'm afraid. Everyone's afraid, and everyone knows it. But we don't have to be afraid anymore, because Christ is our hope.